Before we get into today's stories, I want to thank today's sponsor, Careline. A lot of what I cover starts with something tiny, a detail you dismiss because it's easier than admitting it matters. And honestly, I used to treat my own health the same way. A weird ache, a spike of stress, that quiet voice saying you should probably get checked, and I tell myself I'd handle it tomorrow. Careline made that tomorrow step weirdly easy. It's a free site where you can find in-network doctors, filter by specialty, see real appointment openings, and book instantly without making awkward calls. You can read verified patient reviews, choose someone you actually feel comfortable with, which matters because appointments are stressful enough already. So if you've been putting it off, or you just want a simpler way to find someone you trust, go to sierraline.com/nightstories and see what's available near you. It takes a couple of clicks. Now let's get into it. Story 1. I took a solo winter trip last year. Cured me of solitude for good. I'd been burned out, sleeping badly, snapping at people for no reason. I told myself I needed quiet, the kind you can't find in a city. So I borrowed a friend's off-season cabin key, drove until my phone lost service, and followed a rutted access road that looked like it hadn't seen a plow in weeks. The cabin was small and old, tucked behind a line of pines. No other lights, no other tracks, just the wind and the snow and that deadened silence you only get when the world is covered in white. That first evening felt perfect. I got the stove going, ate something simple, and sat on the porch steps with my headlamp off, letting my eyes adjust to the dark. Quiet out there was so completed, felt like the air was holding its breath. Then I heard the crunch. One step, then another. Slow, deliberate, not the scattered tapping of an animal. Someone moving like they didn't care if they were heard. I stood up, listening, and the footsteps stopped. At the tree lane, a shape shifted into view. A person, half hidden between trunks, just far enough away that I couldn't make out a face. He spoke first. "What are you doing out here?" Not "are you okay?" Not lost. It was the kind of question that assumes you owe an explanation. I told him I was staying in the cabin for a couple nights. His silhouette didn't move. He just watched me like he was deciding what kind of problem I was going to be. I made it clear, as calmly as I could, that I wasn't defenseless. He laughed under his breath and said something about how people used to be friendlier, like I was the rude one for not inviting him closer. Then he turned and walked back into the trees. I stood there a long time after that, staring into the dark until my eyes started inventing shapes. Eventually I went inside, latched the door, and killed every light. I didn't want a warm glow advertising that I was awake, alone, and nervous. The cabin settled into nighttime noises. Pops from the stove, a faint creak as the wood contracted, and then the crunch came back, closer, slow, careful steps in the snow, circling the cabin like whoever it was had all the time in the world. I held my breath and listened until my lungs hurt. The steps climbed the porch. They stopped right outside the door. No knock, no greeting, just a stillness so heavy it felt like pressure on my ears. Then I heard a small sound at the handle, not a yank, more like someone testing it with fingertips, learning how it moved. I didn't shout. I didn't want to create a conversation. I just spoke loud enough for the door to hear me. "You need to leave. Now." A pause. Then the steps moved away, not running, not panicking, just choosing not to push it. They faded into the trees, and the silence returned like nothing had happened. I never went back to sleep. I sat there until the sky started turning gray, and the moment it was light enough to see, I packed like I was evacuating a fire. I left the cabin exactly as I found it, locked the door behind me, and drove out before the road could trap me. I used to think being alone was peaceful. Now I think it just means there's no one around to confirm what you're hearing. Story 2. I visited my friend Nolan in Baltimore for a long weekend last fall. He's the type who doesn't believe in anything he can't diagram, and that's part of why this bothered him as much as it did. The first time we saw him was near the harbor in the middle of the afternoon. A man in a spotless old-fashioned bellhop uniform, bright jacket with brass buttons, hat perfectly set. The weird part wasn't the outfit. The weird part was how clean it was, like it had been pressed 5 minutes ago, and how he moved. He didn't walk like someone enjoying the city. He drifted, slow and stiff, eyes unfocused, like he was following a path only he could see. The street was loud. Tourists trafficked, music from a bar, and yet he moved through it like the noise didn't touch him. Nolan and I instinctively changed direction. We kept moving, and after a while we laughed it off. Cities have weird people. That's the whole point of cities. But an hour later, on a different set of streets, we saw him again. Same uniform, same slow, detached pace. The timing made no sense. We'd taken a route that should have left him far behind, and we never saw him pass us. Yet there he was, already ahead, turning a corner like he'd been waiting for us to arrive. Nolan stopped walking. "No," he said quietly, like he was arguing with math. We tried to ignore it. We did the normal tourist stuff. Dinner, late-night ice cream, wandering through crowds. And that's when it happened the third time. We were on a packed street outside a row of restaurants. People shoulder to shoulder, moving fast. In the middle of it, the bellhop was there again, drifting straight toward us like the crowd was water and he was a stone. The strangest part was how everyone reacted. They didn't. Two people brushed right against him, and neither flinched. No annoyed looks, no stepping aside. It was like their brains edited him out. He turned his head slightly as he passed and looked directly at me. Not a glance, not curiosity, recognition. We watched him disappear into a narrow side street where the lights were worse and the shadows looked deeper than they should have. Neither of us spoke for a long time after that. That night, I slept downstairs on Nolan's couch near a front window. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a soft tapping on the glass. I froze so hard I felt my heartbeat in my teeth. I lifted the corner of the blind just enough to see outside. At the end of the alley, there was a figure stepping around the corner. Bright jacket, hat. He moved out of view and paused like he could feel me watching. And before he disappeared completely, he turned his head back toward the window. The next morning, Nolan listened to me without interrupting. When I finished, he didn't make a joke. He didn't rationalize. He just stared at his coffee for a while and said, "I don't like that." He looked back. I drove home that day and caught myself doing things I never used to do. Checking locks twice, watching reflections in storefront windows. Not because I thought the bellhop was still there, but because some part of me couldn't shake the feeling that he had been where he was supposed to be, and we were the ones out of place. Story 3. I never used to be the kind of person who listened to my house. I lived alone, worked from home, kept to myself. If something creaked at night, I blamed the building. If the wind rattled a window, I rolled over. That changed in 1 week. It started on a Monday around 2 a.m. I was half asleep on the couch when I heard a soft bump from somewhere deeper in the house. Not a bang, not a crash, just a muted sound like someone sitting something down carefully. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing else happened. The next morning, I noticed my back window latch felt different. It's still locked, but it had a looseness to it, like it had been forced and then put back. I told myself it was old hardware. I wrote a note to fix it later. On Wednesday night, I got into bed and realized my phone hadn't charged. The cable was connected, but the adapter wasn't fully seated in the outlet anymore, as if someone had tugged it halfway out. I blamed myself again. Sleepwalking with a charger. That was the story I chose. Thursday, I came home and found my hallway light off. I always leave it on. I stood there holding my keys, trying to remember if I'd changed my routine. Inside, nothing looked disturbed, but the air felt wrong. Not cold, not warm, occupied. Friday morning, I found a faint smear on the floor near the laundry room, like someone had walked through with damp socks and tried to wipe it away with the side of their foot. I didn't tell anyone. I called a handyman and asked him to tighten the latch and replace the back window lock. I kept it practical because saying, "I think someone is inside my house," makes you sound like a person who sleeps with the lights on. That night, I shoved a heavy chair under my bedroom doorknob and locked it. I woke up at 3:40 a.m. to a sound I still hear in my head sometimes. A light tapping on my bedroom door. Not knocking, not trying to get in. Testing. I didn't move. I didn't breathe right. I stared at the door until my eyes went dry. The tapping stopped. Then I heard a soft shuffle moving away. In the morning, the chair was still in place. My bedroom door was still locked, but the back window latch I'd replaced was unlatched. It wasn't broken. It wasn't forced. It was simply open. I called the police and tried to explain without sounding hysterical. They checked the locks, walked through my rooms, looked in closets, and told me they didn't see signs of entry. One officer suggested I might be forgetting things. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with every light on, listening to the house breathe. Around 2 a.m., I heard a sound from above me, near the ceiling, a faint scrape. I looked up, and that's when I noticed it. The attic access panel in the hallway wasn't flush anymore. It was sitting slightly crooked, just enough to show a thin line of darkness around the edge. I stood there for a full minute, staring at that crack like it could blink back. Then I saw movement in it, not a face, just a shifting shadow, as if someone up there had leaned closer to see if I noticed. I left. I grabbed my keys and walked out like my house was already on fire. I called 911 from my car and waited with my doors locked. When the officers arrived, they went in with flashlights and came back out a few minutes later, escorting a man I had never seen before. He was barefoot. His clothes looked slept in. He didn't look at me once, like I wasn't even part of the situation. They searched the attic and found wrappers, bottled water, and a phone charger plugged into an outlet up there. Old insulation had been flattened into a makeshift bed. One officer asked me how often I left the house, and at what times. I answered, and he nodded like it explained everything. Days later, I was scrolling through my cloud backups, trying to distract myself with anything normal, when I found a short video I didn't remember recording. It was filmed from a low angle in the corner of my bedroom. It showed me asleep. It lasted 8 seconds. Right at the end, the camera shifted slightly, like whoever held it adjusted their grip. I stared at that clip until my stomach felt hollow, because the worst part wasn't that someone had been living above my ceiling. The worst part was realizing they had been close enough to film me breathing, and I never knew.